Good morning. Today we'll talk about financing new business. So there's an important concept that applies to financing startups that isn't as applicable to other things, sort of like special to just this kind of economic activity. So we're just going to do a simple example to walk through it. So let's suppose that you have a business that you value at $1 million. Valuation of the especially new enterprises is really tough. It's almost assuredly basically a guess. But we have no choice but to make decisions based on guesses, right? If I started a business and someone wanted to buy it for $7, I'm not going to say, well, I have no idea what this is worth, so I should definitely sell for $7, right? I'll have some kind of estimate, right? And if someone said, hey, I'll buy it for $20 million, I might say, well, the fact that you're offering me that much money is making me increase my private perception of my own business's value, but not to 20 million. So go ahead, write the check. It's yours, right? So we have to make decisions based on conjecture and educated guesses when it comes to valuation for these new businesses. So let's just imagine I have a business and my private estimate as to the value of the business is $1 million. So let's say I get an offer to sell 20% of my business, 20% of the equity in my business for $100,000. Does it make sense to sell? So if you do that math, right, 20% of $1 million is $200,000. So what they're really asking is they're saying, hey, so you have this thing that's worth $200,000. Can I give you $100,000 and then you give me this $200,000 thing? And so the question is, does it make sense to sell under those circumstances? And it feels like an easy question that's sort of like, well, obviously no. I'm basically losing half the value by doing it this way. And yeah, so that turns out to be wrong. So it is true that the implied valuation of this fundraising is $500,000. So the investors are valuing the business privately, publicly in this case, because that's how the math works out, at $500,000. So that's their implied valuation, which is obviously different than yours. However, the answer is still probably yes, we do take the money, and the question is why. And it's really a very simple answer. So the original $1 million value was probably a credit-constrained value, right? There are limits to what we can do based on the amount of money that we have, right? So you can think about, right now, if I wanted to start Subway for pizza, I don't have any money for that, so I would probably have to operate out of my house and try to find out if that's, do a bunch of research on permitting and maybe, have to think about, making changes to the kitchen and then come up with some kind of delivery model and drive them around myself, or who knows, right? There's all sort of wacky contortions that this idea would have to do to conform to the capital constraints that are my personal checking account, right? It wouldn't be even close to the best version of Subway pizza with with the money I have on hand, right? But with a sudden infusion of $100,000, that's like, okay, well, now I can put a down payment on a lease for a commercial kitchen. I can hire a developer to create a website and and an app, and suddenly now we're cooking with gas very quickly, right? So it can very much be that $100,000 can double the value of the business, right? So my business that was worth $1 million is now worth $2 million because it has a cash infusion that's like gasoline on a fire, right? Now, obviously, if it's a terrible business, more money will just make things worse, right? So it really depends on the business and who's running it. But if it's a good business that has a lot of potential, getting that business credit unconstrained will create a lot of value. So in this scenario, let's imagine that it doubles it, right? So the new value after we get cash is $2 million. All right, and so I personally have, post financing, now I don't own 100% of $1 million. I own 80% of $2 million. 80% of $2 million was $1.6 million. So it's in my personal financial best interest to take this financing. Now, maybe there's better offers out there, but if it's really this or nothing, it really is in the financial best interest of me, the entrepreneur, to take this investment, even though they're getting, better than 50% off, right? They're paying $100,000 for something that's worth $400,000. They 4 times their money, basically immediately, right? And so now this, what we're talking about, also happens for large firms, right? But they tend to have credit constraints that are much weaker than brand new companies, right? Like, large corporations have access to the bond market. They have access to commercial paper. They have revolving lines of credit. They can do an issue they can create new shares, sell the shares, take the money from those shares, and do stuff with it. Right? This is like GameStop when they went from $4 to $150, or I know it was a lot higher than that, but right, they can sell shares at that price, and I think in fact just did, and raise capital to then change the business. So, right, will GameStop take the capital that they can raise and then turn into something that's not a mall video game physical disc retailer, right? So the the credit constraints apply all over, but they're especially strong for brand new companies. So here's kind of this in a picture. So the blue, right? The blue is where it's like the ownership value curve, right? So if I own 100% of the business, I'm out here at $1 million and I get $1 million, right? So that's where it would be if I just retained. Now, if I take the financing, that's going to shed 20% of the value. So now my payoff to value curve is flatter. I don't get right. I'm only at $800,000 here. I'm only at $1.6 million here. So I'm not making as much money per dollar of value, but I've pushed the value out to the end of this red line, right? So the question is, would I choose to be here, low on the blue line, or choose to be out here, high on the red line, right? That's why, despite the lower slope, the red line can be a better choice. Now, of course, it all depends on, what's the implied valuation? How much does the money help? Or if we literally don't need money, like with Bingo Card Creator, it doesn't need any money. More money won't even help it. So investment would then be a terrible thing to do because the cash would serve no purpose. But if there's a lot of potential for the investment to do things, then and we've seen this week with the private space companies, right? They require huge amounts of upfront capital to get anywhere, right? And we could have, right? There probably could have been a company that went and did a stock issuance and got capital from the public to do this, but it's so risky, and it had to be almost had to be a private project of a billionaire to get off the ground, right? At this point, they're thriving businesses with contracts and delivery timetables and satellite internet operations that could support public financing, but in that first phase, you have no idea if it's worth doing or even working before billions are spent. So how would it look differently in this, right? So here's that picture. We sold 20% of the company. So how does this picture look differently if we get a loan from friends and family instead? So this is the Napoleon Dynamite story. So I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but the writer, director, producer wanted to make the movie, and I forget what the budget was. It was like either $400,000 or $140,000 or something. I forget what it is. But his brother was the founder of 1-800-CONTACTS, which was a like a pretty big business, and he said, "Oh, I want money to make this movie." And his brother said, "Okay, like I'll do it, but if it doesn't work, this is the last time you get to ask for this, right?" It's sort of like this is your one shot to dip into the friends and family account and do something. So he took the money, filmed Napoleon Dynamite, and the rest is goofy history. So let's see, how does this look differently? So if you think about it in just like in table form, like in numbers by numbers, right? If we have this total business value, as total business values goes up, before financing, the owner share goes up with it, right, in lockstep. If we do a $200,000 loan, if the business only ends up being worth $100,000, all of that value is going to go to the loan, to the friends and family that made the loan, right? Like let's say you get the business up and running, get it to as big as it's going to get, and you sell for $100,000. Well, they're going to get that, right? And you'll get nothing. And at 200, the same. But at 300, right? At 300, there's 100 left for the owner. But you can see, right, at that point, only the owner is only getting 33%. 66% is going to the investors. But then this percentage declines, right? So it gets to be 66% owner, 33% investor at a $600,000 business value. So the percentage is changing, and really bad at low valuations and better at high valuations. So this is what that looks like in pictures, right? So the black is what the investors get, and they get everything up until their commitment, and then it levels off. That's a typical debt arrangement. And so you can see right now, if you remember, for the owners, when we did an equity sale, we ended up with $1.6 million. If we had done a friends and family loan, we'd get double the money, and we'd end up at $1.8 million. So it's a much better deal for the entrepreneur, if things go well, to have a debt financing. Now the scenario is when things don't go well, right? So when things don't go well, if it's an equity investment, there's still a bunch of value left, and for debt there's none. So the investors just get it all. So there's a trade-off between debt financing and equity financing. Debt financing is much more protective of investors at low valuations, but doesn't allow them to participate in the big payoff if things go well. And then obviously an equity investment is the opposite. So why do we care? So that's so we have equity and we have debt. And they behave very differently for new companies. But often the kind of financing that new companies use don't cleanly fit into either one. So an example of something that gets really frequently used is convertible debt. Like simple. Oh, this is a simple example, but it's like simplified a little bit. But this kind of in big picture is how this works. So it's a loan. So if there's value, like in the bad state, the loan gets paid back. But then also, if things go really well, the debt converts to equity and becomes an equity investment. So on the low end, it behaves like debt, and on the high end, it behaves like equity. So you get this picture that looks like this, right? Where down on the low, the purple is what the investors get, right? So on the low end, they're protected; they get their money back. But then once we hit $1 million, right, that's that threshold where 20% of the company is now worth more than the debt value. It starts to go up in value at 20% of the value increase. So a convertible debt for the investors has all of the good parts of debt and equity, right? So as an owner, right, as an entrepreneur, why in the world would you agree to this, right? Like, why would you give your investors the good half of the debt and the good half of the equity, which means you're getting the bad, right? In low scenarios, you get wiped out. In good scenarios, you have to, pay off an ownership share. And the answer is, of course, because that might be all you can get, right? So these are like, for new companies, getting financing at all is like kind of rare and precious. Like there's so many companies that are tried and try to get funding and never get anything, right? So to make the deal go, often it's, well, let's give the investors the best deal we possibly can just to get some money from somewhere, right? And that becomes almost standard practice. So there's a standard agreement for future equity, a SAFE, that gets used a lot, and it there's no it's like a zero interest loan, right? It's like, we'll give you cash, and the options are, we get the cash back if there's any, or we get equity, and don't pay us any interest. And so it functions very much like a convertible bond without interest. And so this is just a really common financing vehicle for early companies, and the reason is because it's super investor friendly, and investors need it super investor friendly because these are very risky investments, right? That most of these will result in almost a total loss, right? So angel investors, we'll get into who those are, but venture capital firms that do this kind of investing, they do it 5, 10, 15, 20 times over a couple year period, and they want to be able to make it up on average, right? So this is just a summary of that. So here's an exercise. And just after I describe it, you can pause the video and try it. So suppose 1 million is actually a 50% chance at 2 million. So it's the $1 million value comes from the fact that this company is basically a coin flip. It could be dead and worth nothing, or it could end up being a $2 million business. The $100,000 isn't a 20% equity stake. It's actually a convertible bond. Okay, so it's a $100,000 convertible bond. It converts to 20% equity if things go well. It stays a bond if things go poorly. After the investment, the firm is still a 50% coin flip, but now it's a $4 million on the good end and $0 million on the bad end. Right, so it still has a good chance of going completely nothing, but can be much higher. So the question is, does the entrepreneur's value go up if they accept the financing? Like, is this a good deal for the entrepreneur? And so let's start with that. So go ahead and think about that, and then, right, how would we decide between a convertible loan at 15% and 20% common equity? So what factors would matter? So let's think about that too. So go ahead and pause and answer that first question, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, let's see how we did. So we have to split this up into cases, right? There's the bad case and the good case. So in case one, the firm goes bankrupt, it's worth nothing, and no one gets anything, right? So that's the bad scenario. In case two, the firm is worth $4 million and is acquired. Okay, so we get the liquidity out. So investors own 20% of the equity, right? Because the $100,000 convertible bond converts to equity at a valuation of higher than 1 million, and the 4 million is obviously much higher than 1 million, so it'll convert. So that leaves $400,000. So they would get a 4 times return on their investment. That only happens half the time, right? So half the time their $100,000 turns to nothing. Half the time their $100,000 turns to $400,000. And so in general, right, on average, their money is doubling. Okay. Now, just because it doubles your money doesn't mean it's a good investment. It depends. Really, the remaining factor is time. So how long did this take? If this took 30 years, it's still a terrible investment. If it took 2, it's almost definitely a really good investment. It depends on prevailing interest rates, right? The higher the interest rates that are available, the faster this has to double the money to make sense. But the reality is, for any reasonable interest rate and time frame, doubling your money as an investor in a matter of a couple years is going to be probably a really good idea. So almost definitely this is a really good investment for the investor. So let's think about the entrepreneur. So they get $3.6 million in the good scenario, and so only half the time they get that, so it's really $1.8 million. But that's a lot better than the $1 million they were going to get, right? That before, the before value was a 50% chance at $2 million. And so this is really just a win-win opportunity, right? So, yep, you got to do a little bit of simple math to get there, but this kind of calculation happens all the time when companies are thinking about raising financing. Okay, so next we'll launch into a discussion of the types of financing and their attributes. So it should be super interesting. So I'll see you next time.